Thank you. I just want to apologize to the press yesterday. We were going to do the press conference, and the George Floyd funeral was going on, and didn't feel it was appropriate to do a press conference during that time, and then the time ran out, so that's why we're here today. The latest COVID-19 numbers in Massachusetts as of Tuesday, the state reached a total of 103,899 cases, an increase of 263 from Monday. The state's now confirmed death rate is 7,408. The Boston numbers as of yesterday, we have a record recorded 13,041 cases and a one-day increase of 15 from the previous day. We have confirmed that 7,817 people have fully recovered from COVID-19 in the city of Boston. We have lost 669 people with 3 new deaths recorded on Monday. Our prayers, we still have family members with sick family members in the hospital with COVID, so our thoughts and prayers go out to them and also the families who lost loved ones during this very difficult time. We're also praying for you. Our case numbers and testing data continues to move in the right direction. Overall, our positive test rate is down by 21.4%. If you're tracking that, I believe we started somewhere in the ballpark of the mid-30s, and we've been going steadily down. The week ending June 6th was a 5.3% increase, so those weeks are very low, and they're bringing down the overall rate. The rate of 21.4% test rate is from the very beginning. The numbers keep going down, but we have 2 things that we still want to do. First, we have to keep taking precautions to slow the spread of the virus. That means personal precautions and collective precautions. And I'll be sending more about phase 2 today, talking about it and sharing more. The second big thing is we have to keep making COVID testing available on a broad and equitable basis. So I'm going to give a brief update on testing. We've made testing available across the city through our partnerships with our community health centers. And once again, I want to thank all of our community health centers for opening up testing facilities inside the health centers. We are into our second round of universal testing on our homeless population. We've made testing universal, accessible for first responders and many of our frontline workers, the folks that are delivering the food and serving the food and cleaning and janitorial services. We are bringing mobile testing to public housing developments and senior buildings all across the city of Boston. In phase 2, we're going to continue to have more people out and about interacting, so we're going to need to continue to making testing available more widely and equitably. This is how we're going to keep people safe. It's how we're going to get the data that we need to make the decisions as far as reopening and how we proceed forward. And that's how we're going to contain potential spikes. This week, we have offered testing to people who have been demonstrators and making their voices heard. We want to make sure that anyone that was out there that wants a test, please go on the website or call 311. We want to make sure that you're safe as well, just so in order for worrying about spreading the virus if you contracted the virus. We're working with the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center to create a pop-up testing site in Roxbury, and we're working with our mobile site. This site is available by walk-up, and it's open to anyone symptomatic or not. There is no special screening or requirements, but we're reaching out to the organizers of the demonstrations to help spread the word to let people know this is available. This resource is available to members of the community who have been active in this movement. We know that the risk of COVID is just one of the verses affecting our community. And as people lift their voices to fight racism and injustice, we want to make sure that we keep them safe as well. These are both top priorities of the city of Boston. This week, I've been meeting with members of my cabinet. I've been continuing to talk with staff of color and elected officials of color. My focus is on creating a conversation that can be sustained and lead to permanent solutions and systemic. In the past, what we've seen is conversations, and when the demonstrations stop, the conversations stop. And that's not what we're going to do here in the city of Boston. Excuse me. These solutions have to include police reform, and they have to go beyond that as well, to include housing, education, economic opportunities. This also includes equity and public health. Equity is the message of this movement, and equity is our top priority. We want people with heightened risk of any kind, whether due to long-term inequalities or recent events to be able to get tested, stay healthy, and keep working and moving forward. On Monday, phase 2 of the state's reopening plan began. In the city of Boston, on Monday coming, June 15th, and we'll be opening playgrounds and splash pads with new safety signage. Athletic fields and tennis courts are now open for non-contact activity, but team sports and group events are still prohibited at this point out of safety. Boston Center for Youth and Families are developing a modified summer programming and schedule for young people ages 6 to 18, which will be starting in July. We'll be announcing more details and more departments in the days to come. We want Boston residents to know they have access to all the healthy and positive resources they need and deserve. But we also are going to continue to move very cautiously. And I want to remind everyone, reopening does not mean the risk of COVID is gone. It is still very much with us. Safe reopening means managing your risk at all times. For individuals, that includes wearing face coverings and practicing social and physical distancing while you're outside your home. For stores, restaurants, and hotels in every business, it means making sure state requirements and protocols and consulting the additional guidelines that we'll continue to publish on boston.gov/reopening. The newest guidelines are for houses of worship, and they'll be available online today. Many of our houses of worship were allowed to open a couple weeks ago. They chose not to out of concern and somewhat little confusion on what they can do and can't do. So our guidelines will be up today that you'll have a full understanding of recommendations. When in doubt, take cautious approaches to go the pace that is right for you and your employees. Your workers, especially low-income workers, low-wage workers, may be afraid and may have challenges dealing with childcare. I'm asking you to please communicate with them clearly and include them in your planning, and reach out to the city for advice if you're uncertain. We are committed to helping our small businesses open safely and successfully here in the city of Boston. We created the Reopen Boston Fund to provide grants for PPE and safety material. The first grants will be going out this Friday, and we've been working with whoever and wherever we can to remove the barriers and to provide new opportunities. The restaurant industry, as we all know, has been hit especially hard during these times, and we've made it a priority, creating new resources and lifting the range of regulations. With outdoor dining allowed in Phase 2, we've been working across multiple departments and to make it successful and make the reality for our restaurants a success as they recover from this crisis. We created expedited approval process for temporary expansion into public and private spaces. We've waived licensing fees for outdoor dining. We're reaching out and have reached out and continue to reach out directly to restaurants across the city and different cultures. And we have an equitable citywide plan that is currently underway. So far, we've had close to 500 different applications from restaurants all across our city, from small cafes and coffee shops in neighborhoods to downtown restaurants. More than 200 of them have been fully or conditionally approved, from Luna's in East Boston to M&M Barbecue in Dorchester to Darrow's Bar and Kitchen in the South End. And the approvals continue to roll in on a daily basis. Excuse me. If you've applied and received approval, you can begin outdoor service on your property or in a parking space outside your establishment or wherever has been deemed appropriate immediately. Those outdoor spaces can remain open from 10 p.m. on weeknights and 11 p.m. on weekends. We are treating the North End a little separately due to the density of restaurants and the opportunity to create shared spaces for clusters in restaurants. Outdoor dining in the North End can begin tomorrow, although I think some of it began yesterday. I want to be upfront with the neighbors who have concerns. We have to move quickly to help our restaurants and our business districts in the city to survive, be safe, and recover. So this is not a typical community process, but the conversations are going to continue. We will publish a web list with all approval listed so you can check on the different locations in our city, let us know how things are going, and we can work out solutions in real time. This is an unprecedented situation, as we all know, and we need to give a little to help our small businesses recover. in my words here, it says survive, but I think recover in a lot of cases, and survive. But we are committed to working with everyone who's impacted, and with your help, making sure outdoor dining is good for our city. This is the kind of conversation that's helping us come together during this crisis and making our city stronger. Sorry about that. There's also the goal of our work with the vulnerable communities that have been hit the hardest by this crisis and have been hit the hardest by inequality for some time. Today, we can share 3 different funding sources that we are using to accelerate this work. I think I have a cold. I hope it's a cold. This week, the Boston Resiliency Fund is distributing another $825,000 to a total 21 different organizations. These organizations are helping vulnerable Bostonians impacted by the COVID crisis, including families and seniors who need food, young people of color who are at risk, and residents returning from incarceration. The fund has raised a total of $32 million, and more importantly, has distributed over $20 million to those in need. In addition to creating the Resiliency Fund, we have also reoriented many of our existing resources to meet the needs of this crisis. The Neighborhood Job Trust is a good example of this. The Jobs Trust supports affordable housing, job training, using linkage fees from development. It's our administration has worked out, and it's also working through our Office of Workforce Development that we created in 2014. This week, we dedicated $2.4 million to job training and emergency financial support for low-income workers and college students hurt by this crisis. That includes remote learning for English language learners. Thank you, Marty. That includes remote learning for English language learners, retraining for hospitality and restaurant workers who lost their job during the pandemic. Grantees also include the Urban League of Massachusetts and Roxbury Community College and several other organizations in our city. Job training and job placement is the work that we were doing before COVID, and we're going to continue to do after COVID. But the pandemic has both deepened the need and heightened the urgency of our response to inequality. This week, we increased our youth employment budget to nearly $12 million, adding $4.1 million to support 8,000 summer jobs that were at risk of being lost due to COVID. We've made tremendous progress over the last few years in professionalizing our summer job program. We've added enrichment and mentoring and tracking the impact with data. It's a program that has been recognized nationally, and many cities around America are copying. It's a priority for me to make sure that this positive opportunity is still available to all of our young people here in the city of Boston. Many of the usual workplaces are not going to be open or able to accommodate student work this year. We've heard about other cities canceling their summer job programs for that reason. We're not going to do that here in Boston. We're determined to get creative and provide the funding needed to support our young people. Many of our young people in their summer job help put food on the table and pay bills. Many of our young people are saving money when they go to college, so it's really important. Some of the opportunities that we're providing for our young people that are new, we'll have 500 young people working with the Parks Department and Public Work Department on beautification projects throughout the city of Boston. 400 students will work on our peer-to-peer COVID awareness campaign. This is where young people are going to go online and connect with other young people about the importance of wearing masks and social and physical distancing. Another 400 people can work with a different 2-year college on a pathway program and getting college credits for that. This is another example of how we're responding to the crisis and can strengthen the work that we're doing to increase opportunity and community investment moving forward. Before I conclude, I just want to address the issue of fireworks in our neighborhood. Many of the stations have been reporting on it. There's always been illegal fireworks leading up to the 4th of July, but this year it's worse than usual. It started early and it never seemed to stop. The data is eye-opening. Fireworks calls to the Boston Police Department this year were up by 2,300%. When I saw that number, I thought it was a misprint. 2,300% this May compared to last May. That's 27 calls last year in May to over 650 calls this year in May. It's hard to believe that those numbers actually happen. If we weren't hearing it, and if I wasn't hearing the fireworks with my own ears, I wouldn't know the difference. I've gotten reached out to by members of the Boston City Council to ask me to address this issue and have more presence in the community. I've also got reached out to by other elected officials, and I could name them, but there's too many to name, but almost every single elected official in every single neighborhood has reached out to us here about these fireworks. I just want to remind everyone, this is a serious issue. People are frightened. People are losing sleep. Babies and kids are woken up. Pets are terrified. Our veterans and others with PTSD are experiencing real harm. And it's a real fire hazard in our city. In one case last week, the police responded to reports of a gunshot in Mattapan. It turned out to be fireworks. But our neighbors had to deal with the fear and the violence of what was happening on their street, not understanding that it was fireworks. The police have been able to confiscate some illegal fireworks, but there's only so much that they can do. So I'm asking you, if you're involved in this behavior, I want you to think about the people around you. I want to think about the seniors in your neighborhood. I want to think about the kids in your neighborhood, the families in your neighborhood. Think about your community and stop it. I'm asking you, if you know people involved in this behavior, tell them the impact they're having on others in their community and ask them if they would stop it. There are many ways to support your community. Thinking about our elders and being a considerate neighbor is certainly a good start. I also want to close by talking about the overwhelmingly positive things our young people are doing here in Boston. The Boston Public School community has done an incredible job adapting to these unprecedented disruptions. It's certainly been an all hands on deck. Teachers and staff, principals, administrators, our bus drivers, our monitors, everybody has been part of the conversation and helping us with solution. Everyone's working to help distribute meals, deliver technology, reach out to our students, and last but definitely not least, our students and our families have been part of this as well. Many Boston students face tough challenges, more than any other district in the country. We have students working to support their families, students who have immigrated here still learning English, students with disabilities who just need the right supports to shine. Every time I talk to a parent, a teacher, a principal, or the superintendent, I hear another story of resilience. I want to share one from the Henderson Inclusion School in Dorchester. Principal Patricia Lampron and teachers and staff and students at the Henderson are a model community. Toni Moget Franklin is a member of the class of 2020. She'll be studying at the Ben Franklin Institute of Technology and the Mass Art next year. Toni has been passionate about art ever since she started using it to communicate when her autism left her temporarily unable to speak. For her senior portfolio at the Henderson, she created a collection of poems and artworks about the COVID crisis. Her last piece is a drawing of herself at her senior prom, a prom that never happened because of the pandemic. It's the picture she's looking through two masks, a masquerade mask from the prom and a surgical mask to keep her safe. She wrote, and I quote, "This is an example of how I see the real world through my own eyes." I just want to show you the picture that she did. Toni, I think you're watching, and I want to say thank you, and to the entire class of 2020 for showing us how to see the world through your eyes, whether your arts, your science, or your activism. And I want to thank all of the graduates for their incredible work here in Boston and throughout the Commonwealth. With that, I will open up to questions. Not right now. I will address it. We are having meetings right now. The question is, I would say that I'm going to reallocate some of the funds from police, and can I get specifically right now? And I can't get specific right now because we're in the process right now of reworking the budget. Just so everyone understands, right around February, we put a budget together for the City of Boston, and then we submit it to the City Council in early April. The council then begins hearings on the budget, and then historically what the council has done in the first, after the hearings, the first go-around, they vote the budget down and resubmit it back to the administration, which is in the process right now, and we take the budget and with recommendations from the council and from what they heard from the public, and then we resubmit another budget. I believe we'll be resubmitting another budget next week. The issue of COVID, which is really front and center, we're looking at a roughly $65 million to an $80 million reduction in the budget on top of what's happening because of lost revenue here in the city. So I can't get into, I don't have specifics for you right now. We're in the midst of putting our budget together. Yeah, I mean, certainly we don't condone any vandalism here in the city of Boston, and that needs to stop. We are going to be taking the statue down this morning, putting it into storage to assess the damage of the statue. This particular statue has been subject of repeated vandalism here in Boston, and given the conversations that we're certainly having right now in our city of Boston and throughout the country, we're also going to take time to assess the historic meaning of the statue. So I'll leave it with that. We'll have a conversation at some point. Let me come, Cameron, I'll go right out.
What's your priority for the police budget? Kind of just your vision for the police department moving forward. I mean, you're not talking the numbers that you're in contract negotiations, but do you see them, losing the tackling some of those social issues that they learned to do over the last year?
Yeah, the question was, what do I see as my priority maybe for the police budget, and are we going to be tackling some of the issues that have been discussed over the last couple of days? And the answer is we are having a meeting today with police and budget to talk about their budget. Quite honestly, since I've been mayor of Boston, I have continually talked about equality. I've talked about investment in the policing. When I became mayor and prior to me becoming mayor, I talked about reforming the police department. And in 2015, we went to work with that. One of the first things we did was making sure, and I made this commitment during the campaign for mayor in 2013, that the command staff would reflect the community. And we kept that promise. We reinstituted the cadet program. We've worked on diversity. We were able to work on programs around de-escalation. We've worked on programs about talking and training about racism, and we're going to continue that. And I think that the police department constantly has to evolve and address these issues. And I think that in light of Mr. Floyd's murder, I think it really puts a real urgency to have even a deeper look at our practices and how we handle ourselves, on what reviews look like. I mean, I can stand here and tell you that our complaints against police officers since 2013 are down 41%. Complaints against excessive use of force are down 50%. Our arrests are down 10% over the last 7 years, and that's all good numbers. But that doesn't mean that we're perfect by any stretch of the imagination. And there's a lot of conversations going on, and I look forward to having those conversations. Even with the city council, a lot of councilors have been talking about what they want to work on, and I'm waiting for a response back from the president of the council to have a meeting. I reached out to the president several times now to have a sit down and talk about these issues. And I think it can't just be with the council. I think we have to have a broader community conversation. And I think there has to be, I think people need to understand what we've done in Boston as far as reforming policing, but also acknowledging, hearing what people are saying, that some people feel, and accurately, we might not have we probably haven't gone far enough. So we have to have those conversation dialogues. And in this, I've made a commitment. I made a commitment right here at this podium, I believe it was last Friday, to do that. And I'm committed to doing that, and I've done it since I've been mayor of Boston and before that. I'll come this way. I'll come this way.
Yeah, sure. See the mural leading to the White House in D.C. saying Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
Several other big cities are starting to follow suit. Any chance that there would be something like that?
Yeah, I mean, this is the first time I've been talked about it. I didn't realize that. I saw the mural I saw the mural in Washington D.C. and Mayor Bowser is a friend, and you know, I commend her for that. And it's not just about a mural; it's also making sure we do the work. I'm not saying if we should have the conversation absolutely about that and see where it's appropriate, where we do things like that in the city. I think it can't just be one on the street. I think it's about more conversations and more expression around the city.
The police budget is above 90% personnel-related costs. Does that mean any substantial cuts would mean layoffs, and is that what needs to happen? Does there need to be less costs for street costs?
The question is, let me try and, I think you heard that. The question is, the police budget, will you repeat that again?
It's about 90% personnel-related costs.
90% personnel-related costs, and does looking at cutting the budget, reduce layoffs. We're not laying off in the city. I can say that right now. Even with the potential $80 million in reductions that we have to do across the board, layoffs is not at the top of the list in any department in the city. That's something we're not going to do. And I think that, you know, what I'm hearing is, you know, I think what I heard last week was a cut the budget, reduce the budget, take the police overtime away, and now the conversations are coming around to how can we potentially take some of the money in the police department and redirect it towards maybe mental health counseling, equity training, things like that, and those conversations are all happening right now. I won't be laying any public safety off. I hope I don't have to. I mean, if we have to lay public safety off or anyone off in the city of Boston, we have another compounded issue as far as the economy goes.
Is it possible to enact any police reform in the city without dealing with the CBA control?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The question is there an opportunity to enact any reform in the city without the CBA? Actually, I would probably argue most of the reform we can do is without the collective bargaining agreement. These are rules and regulations for the department that we can do. I mean, when we made changes in 2015, we didn't have to get any approval at all for that. As everyone knows, my labor background, the unions represent the workers, and the workers work for the city. And when we want to think about instituting policy and changes, most of it does not have to be collective bargain. There are some aspects that we have to collective bargain, and we will do that if we have to in certain areas. Absolutely.
Efforts to change the name of Faneuil Hall in the wake of the George Floyd death. Is it time to seriously consider that?
You know, that question, I saw that the other day. I have not had a conversation about that. I know that part of Faneuil Hall, there's a history there that's a very bad history in our country, and also a lot of great things happen in Faneuil Hall about the not the rebirth, but the growth of our country. And I think that at this point, I have not engaged in any conversations, and certainly everything is on the table to have conversations about.
Mayor, advocates have been calling specifically for at least a 10% cut to the police budget to start, $40 million for overtime. Do you want to respond to that?
We're going to have a conversation inside City Hall about I mean, cutting the budget, just cutting the budget doesn't solve anything. Cutting the budget doesn't deal with racism. Cutting the budget doesn't deal with systemic issues. That doesn't resolve anything. I think that what I've heard, and I heard from some of the councilors yesterday, it's not just about cutting the budget, it's about how do we redirect some of the money potentially into other areas. And I think that's the conversation. But cutting, I mean, people have come out against cutting budgets. Bernie Sanders came out the other day against cutting budgets. It's just arbitrarily cutting budgets. That's not the answer, in my opinion, moving forward. You know, this has been a challenging week for a lot of people, including myself and many of us. And what I find that's really interesting, I was on a call last night. It has nothing to do with police budgets, but I was on a call last night with some venture capital firms in the country, and they wanted me to speak as the mayor of Boston. The call was set up before George Floyd was murdered. and the conversation is going to be about recovery of America, if you will. And once we got through the health inequity issue or the health COVID issue, the conversation switched to how can some of these companies, what can they do for real substantial change? And it was interesting because the conversations are still happening, and it's important for us not to lose sight of that. That as we think about, and again, I know it's not on the question that was asked me about policing, but the conversations that we're having in America now, these conversations, and I stood at this podium again last week and said, I'm going to listen, and I did listen. And there is times for action as well. And when I say listen, we're listening, but we're also reacting and creating action. And I think that over the course of the next couple of days here in the city, I'm going to be talking a lot more about the action steps we're going to be taking. But it's not simply going to be good enough for the mayor of Boston or a city council to talk about something. It's about how do we put those words into real change. No, maybe COVID. I think people are home. I was talking to a police officer today, and I think we make an assumption that these fireworks come from New Hampshire. And what they were explaining to me was some of these fireworks that are being set off, they're not sold in New Hampshire. So I think it's something bigger than that. I don't know if anyone remembers when I was a kid, and you wanted fireworks, you go to Haymarket and you'd buy the fireworks, and that just disappeared. And that just like you couldn't buy them on the market anymore. I don't know where you got them anymore. So there's something more here. There was a couple of the Boston Police Department have seized some fireworks, I believe, the other night in Mattapan in Southie, and then last night you guys were reporting on a big fireworks seizure in Malden, I think it was. So, and then last night it was relatively quiet. So I don't know what the connection is. Usually fireworks start July 3rd. You hear them the 4th. You hear them for a week after, and they go away. This has been tough. I mean, one went off the other night, and I thought somebody blew up the park next to me. Say again? No, I'm not sure. I just think that there's a lot going on right now, and I think fireworks just kind of, I think, over the last 14, 21 days, between COVID and all of the demonstrations and what people are just, their brains are consumed with, I think the fireworks were kind of on the back burner, and in the last couple of days, people are like, wait a second, these things are annoying, and they've been going off for 10 days now. Can we do something about it? Yeah, I mean, we've started to cut back on the National Guard in the city of Boston over the last couple of days, and we're going to be assessing as we moving forward on what that plan will be. Most of those National Guardsmen and women are citizen soldiers who they're our first responders. They work in our civilian areas. And we're going to continue to make sure that I was on a call yesterday with the Back Bay Association, and I explained to them that we're in the process of these are the business owners in the Back Bay and on Newbury Street, and every kind of organization has their own association. But I explained to them that we're in the process of phasing down their presence here in the city of Boston, and we're going to continue to do that. They're actually more than my salary.
Sorry, that was the point being made. So just wondering if you had anything to say about that. And then a related question, there were actually a number of individual council people testifying about what they described as bad police behavior, aggressive police behavior during the previous Sunday protest. And is there any sort of report or kind of, summary of just kind of looking at everything that happened, both on the protester side but also the Boston Police Department side, in terms of those complaints? I don't know how many of them have made it to you.
Yeah, so two-part question. One is about salaries. It was brought up at the city council hearing. yesterday, and the second was about reports on the protests and just overall reporting. On the salary, I mean, that's the city council has an obligation to review the budget and to vote up or down the budget that they feel fit. The questions that they ask on anybody's salary, for that matter, should be asked in that setting. I can't speak directly to individual salaries. I know that once a year, the paper reports, the Herald reports people's earnings. Sometimes those earnings are retirement. Sometimes those earnings are included in that are buyouts. I can't get into specific cases, and I think that those are justifiable questions by the council, and that's quite honestly their job and responsibility to do that, as well as mine, and to reduce those costs. We constantly have, I would love to as mayor, reduce overtime costs across the city on everything, from police to fire to EMS to Parks and Recreation, all across the board. But some of those overtime costs are at the request of the community. I'm talking generalization now, because people expect services. So, I mean, I can't get much into that. As far as the report goes and the events, I don't think the police have had a chance and the administration has had a chance to sit down and review, assess every single night, because we've had people demonstrating in a peaceful way, and thank you for that, in our city for the last 10 days. And I think at some point, no, I don't think, at some point those conversations will be had, but as of right now, we haven't done that. It's just because we're constantly, there's a lot going on, and we're still, just to remind everyone, we're still in the middle of COVID-19. This is something that's still here. I mean, more than 75% of our workforce is still probably working from home. We just opened up the offices last week, and there's still not a lot of people in Boston. I'm seeing more people sprinkle into Boston, but there's still a lot of people not here. So, and then we have situations like the fireworks and other things that people are concerned about. Yeah, I mean, we're certainly, just to be clear, I mean, on the body camera thing, we didn't have body cameras in Boston 2 years ago. No officers had them. No officers wore them. We didn't have them as a part of a policy. And we put together a task force. And I want to thank the members of the task force, because the recommendation that they came back with is that we have body cameras in the city of Boston. And we took them. We took that recommendation. And we've had over 1,000 officers now who've been trained and equipped with body cameras across the districts, including bikes and specialty units. I'm certainly fully supportive of body cameras. And I think that as we continue to move forward here, we're still working on the technology and having enough technology to be able to have body cameras on officers for 2-3 shifts. So I think a lot of officers had them on. Not all officers had them on. I can't get into specific why some did, some didn't. I'll get that answer to you so you can report it tonight. Yeah, it's not even just technology catching up. It's just making sure we have the technology for the officers, because you have a camera assigned to an officer, and there's a certain battery life in that camera. And what happens is, question about overtime here, is that oftentimes to fill shifts later in the day that officers might have called in sick, we can't leave that unfilled. So, for example, in an office space, you have 10 employees working, 3 call in sick. Well, you can still move your office forward 7 workers. When a police department has 10 workers going on a shift and 3 call in sick, you have to fill those 3 slots. So again, the cameras, we are working on that process right now. This is not new. This isn't because of the protests this week. This is something that many of you have asked me this question in the past, and we've given you the answers many times in the past. And if you go back and look at some of the answers, maybe you haven't asked me, but if you go back and look at some of the answer is consistent, and we'll get that information to you. Yeah, I mean, I saw that last night. I mean, I know there's. I was watching the press conference the other day. There's a lot in that legislation that I think we do in Boston. Certainly, I'm not opposed to it. To some degree, there is a certification. There's probably the most stringent training that anyone receives for a job is our first responders, and I say all of our first responders. So I'm not sure what the certification comes with. I would be more interested in making sure the training is consistent across the Commonwealth, and making sure that as you go from one jurisdiction to another, you go from Boston to another city, the training for officers is the same. That's what's important right here now, that we don't have inconsistency in training and inconsistency in the way that officers operate.
You're going to talk a little bit about the investigation of the police cruiser that was on fire and how it's getting addressed.
Yeah, it's under investigation. I didn't, until I saw my alert on my phone last night, I didn't know anything about that. So I have as much information as the reporter who reported it on my app right now.
Mayor, you said on the opening, the city of Boston is lifting its pandemic curfew because the trends are moving in the right direction. Are you considering doing that?
I think we already did that. Yeah, we already did that. Yeah. Yeah, to help our restaurants too. I mean, our restaurants are open till 10. We're telling you to stay in till 9. It's like there's a natural conflict there. Those people that listen to the curfew, the recommended curfew. All right, everyone, thank you. Have a great day.